Imagine standing in a quiet, dimly lit room where a door is perpetually left slightly ajar. You can't see what's hiding on the other side, but there's a thin, cold, persistent draft that never quite goes away, no matter how much you turn up the heat. This is the spiritual reality of an unfinished goodbye. We've all experienced it. That person who walked out of our lives years ago, but still occupies a front row seat in the theater of our minds. Or perhaps it's the ghost of a heated conversation that loops endlessly, your brain seeking a different ending, a better punchline, or a moment of validation that never arrived. Why do these emotional echoes persist? Why do we find ourselves replaying the same scenes decades later, subconsciously hoping for a different resolution? Today, we are diving deep into the spiritual and psychological layers of these emotional loops. Inspired by the profound teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda, we're going to define the unfinished goodbye not as a mere lack of words spoken at a funeral or a breakup, but as a lingering energetic frequency, a specific karmic resonance that simply refuses to settle into the earth. It is a state of being where the heart is still anchored to a past moment, preventing the soul from fully arriving in the present now. Think of it as a frequency mismatch. When we leave things unsaid or unfelt, we create what Yogananda called a samskara, a deep-seated mental impression that acts like a psychic magnet, pulling our consciousness back into the past. These invisible threads aren't just static memories, they are active karmic ties that dictate our current capacity for peace and joy. We'll explore what these ties mean, how they repeat across our new relationships, and how we can finally close that door to reclaim our inner freedom.
To understand these loops, we turn to the wisdom of Paramhansa Yogananda, who taught that karma is not a system of punishment, but a profound law of equilibrium. Yogananda described karma as the unfinished business of the soul. When we experience a deep relationship or a significant life event, we generate a specific, potent energy. If that energy isn't fully processed, understood, or resolved, it doesn't simply disappear when the person leaves or the event ends. Instead, it remains in our causal body as a seed, waiting for the right conditions to sprout again. These seeds, or samskaras, act as magnetic blueprints, drawing similar circumstances back to us until we finally learn the lesson the soul originally intended to master. Think of these samskaras as latent impressions that stay dormant in the subconscious mind. They create a psychological and spiritual resonance that attracts specific types of people or repeating emotional conflicts. The mind keeps replaying old memories because it is searching for a resolution to the energy that was left hanging. This is why we often feel an inexplicable pull towards certain individuals who mirror our past hurts. We are unconsciously trying to rewrite the ending. The causal body acts as a storage house for these karmic seeds, holding them across lifetimes if necessary. Until the underlying energy is balanced through conscious awareness or forgiveness, the blueprint remains active, perpetually recreating the same drama. It is only by recognizing the pattern and understanding the spiritual lesson behind the pain that we can finally neutralize the seed. When the lesson is mastered, the magnetic pull vanishes, and the cycle of the unfinished goodbye finally reaches its natural conclusion, leaving us free to reclaim our inner peace.
You've likely experienced it. The door is locked, the bags are packed, and the miles are growing between you and someone from your past. Yet, in the quiet of the night, their presence feels as heavy as if they were standing right in the room. Why is a physical parting so often insufficient for true spiritual closure? Paramhansa Yogananda offered a profound explanation. He taught that we are not merely physical beings of flesh and bone, but intricate bundles of energy and consciousness. When two people interact deeply, whether through love, conflict, or shared trauma, their auric fields actually intertwine. Think of it like two threads of light weaving into a single cord. When you walk away physically, you're only addressing the material plane. You've moved the body, but the energetic cord remains. If the astral connection is still charged with high-voltage emotions, like sharp resentment, a deep aching longing, or the static of confusion, that link stays active. Yogananda called this astral magnetism. It functions like a form of psychic gravity. Just as a planet pulls objects into its orbit, these unresolved emotional charges create a gravitational pull that drags the memory of that person back into your conscious awareness over and over again. It's crucial to understand that this isn't a form of cosmic punishment or a sign that you're failing to move on. Rather, it's a functional mechanism of the soul. The soul inherently seeks balance. It recognizes the discord left in the energy field and is trying to harmonize it. This psychic gravity is actually an invitation to resolve the internal frequency of the relationship so the energy can finally be released. Until the astral vibration is neutralized, the ghost of the relationship will continue to knock, seeking the harmony that the physical goodbye couldn't provide.
To truly understand these emotional cycles, we have to look at the spiritual mechanics residing in the chitta, or the subconscious storehouse of the mind. Paramhansa Yogananda often used a beautiful and precise metaphor for this: the mind as a lake. In this framework, every thought, every interaction, and every trauma creates a wave, known in Sanskrit as a vritti, upon the surface of the water. When a goodbye is complete, the wave crests and eventually subsides, allowing the water to return to a state of perfect stillness. However, when a goodbye is left unfinished, it is as if a heavy stone has been dropped into the lake, but for some reason, it never hits the bottom. It remains suspended in the depths, continuously generating ripples that distort the surface. The mind replays the memory not out of a desire for suffering, but because it is trying to fix the wave. It is searching for a resolution, a missing word, an apology, or a shift in perspective that will finally allow the stone to settle and the water to become calm again. This is compounded by a fascinating, albeit painful, psychological reality. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between a past memory and a current event. It lacks a linear sense of time. This is precisely why replaying an old argument from 20 years ago can feel just as visceral and gut-wrenching as if it were happening this morning. Your body reacts to the vritti with the same intensity today as it did back then. These ripples are not just echoes. To your inner self, they are the current reality, keeping you anchored to a past that hasn't yet been permitted to sink. Have you ever looked at your life and felt a strange, unsettling sense of déjà vu? Not in a place you visited, but in the souls you choose to surround yourself with. This is perhaps the most telling sign of an unfinished karmic thread, the repetition of patterns across entirely different relationships. It is that haunting realization that you might be dating the same personality over and over, just in a different body. Or perhaps you're struggling with a new manager who triggers the exact same defensive, prickly reaction your father did decades ago. This isn't just a string of bad luck. It is the karmic loop in active operation. Paramhansa Yogananda taught that life is essentially a cosmic schoolhouse. He explained that the universe will keep presenting us with the exact same test until we finally change our internal reaction to it. Think of it as a spiritual equation. Until the variable of your response changes, the result of the experience will always remain the same. The energy of an unresolved emotion doesn't dissipate just because you changed your zip code or your job title. When we walk away from a situation without finding true inner closure, that deep, soulful goodbye, we inadvertently carry the script of our past into our future. The unfinished goodbye with one person becomes the subconscious hello to the same conflict with the next. We end up casting new people in the old, painful roles of our unresolved history, essentially forcing them to play a part in a drama they didn't write. In this cycle, the external faces change, but the internal geometry of the struggle remains static. To break this loop, we must realize the conflict isn't with the new person, it is with the old threads still vibrating within us. Until we settle that internal debt, we are simply reciting old lines to a new audience. To understand why these emotional loops persist, we have to look beneath the surface of the memory itself and examine what Paramhansa Yogananda called vasanas. In Sanskrit, a vasana is a deep-seated latent desire, or a settled tendency that resides in the subconscious mind. Think of them as the spiritual glue that binds us to our karma. When a relationship ends abruptly,
or a goodbye feels unfinished, it's rarely just about the person we lost. It's about the unfulfilled vasana we are still carrying within. If you left a situation still desperately craving validation, or perhaps harboring a secret wish for revenge or protection, that specific desire remains active in your spiritual DNA. Yogananda explained that as long as the ego mind clings to a desire for a specific outcome, like needing that person to finally admit they were wrong, the soul remains tethered to the cycle of that relationship. You aren't just remembering them, you are energetically bound to the unresolved frequency of your own wanting. These unfulfilled desires act as a spiritual homing beacon. They pulse quietly in the background, ensuring that the unfinished nature of the goodbye keeps your soul in a state of chronic restlessness. You might find yourself searching for completion in new partners, or replaying the same argument in your head 1,000 times, hoping for a different ending. But here is the profound truth Yogananda shared. That completion can never be found in the outside world. As long as the vasana is active, no external apology or new relationship can ever truly silence the loop. The resolution must happen within the quiet theater of your own consciousness, by addressing the desire itself rather than the person it's attached to. So, how do you actually know if you are caught in one of these karmic threads? It isn't always a dramatic cosmic sign. Usually, it's much more subtle, woven into the fabric of your daily thoughts. One of the clearest indicators is the presence of obsessive internal dialogues. Have you ever found yourself in the shower or driving to work, locked in a heated argument with someone who hasn't been in your life for years? You're explaining your side, defending your choices, or finally delivering that perfect comeback. This is more than just a wandering mind. It's a spiritual leak. You are essentially trying to complete an interaction that remains energetically open, pouring your current vitality into a ghost of the past. Then there are the dreams. Not just ordinary dreams, but recurring scenarios that leave you feeling heavy, anxious, or profoundly exhausted upon waking. Paramhansa Yogananda taught that the subconscious mind is a vast storehouse of samskaras, deep-seated impressions, and unresolved desires. When you keep dreaming of the same unresolved situation, your soul is signaling that the karmic movie is still playing in your mental theater because you haven't yet walked out of the room. Pay close attention to what we call the disproportionate emotional charge. This is when a tiny objective reminder, a specific scent, a song, or even just a name mentioned in passing, triggers a massive, sudden wave of grief or anger. If the reaction doesn't match the stimulus, you've hit a live wire of karma. Finally, look for the emotional deja vu. It's that sinking feeling that you've been in this exact emotional cul-de-sac before, perhaps with a different person, but with the same result. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward reclaiming the energy you've unknowingly left behind. We must look at the deceptive role the ego plays in preventing closure. As Paramhansa Yogananda pointed out, the ego thrives on duality and drama. It lives in the tension between opposites. Because of this, the ego would often rather be in a state of painful connection, ruminating on a betrayal or a loss, than in a state of neutral emptiness. To the ego, neutral emptiness feels like a void, a kind of non-existence that it fears above all else. The ego clings to these unfinished goodbyes because they provide a convenient, albeit painful, sense of identity. It allows us to adopt specific roles: the victim, the abandoned one, or the one who was wronged. When we hold on to the lack of closure, we are essentially maintaining a tether to a version of ourselves that exists only in relation to that past trauma. We can see how the ego uses this lack of resolution as a psychological shield against the raw reality of the present moment. If we are busy replaying the tape of what went wrong, we don't have to face the stillness of who we are right now. True closure, therefore, requires a symbolic death of this ego identity. This is precisely why it feels so frightening and why we resist it so fiercely. Releasing the attachment doesn't just mean saying goodbye to the other person. It means letting go of the story we have told ourselves about who we are in relation to them. It means giving up the right to be angry or the necessity of being hurt. Yogananda taught that when we dissolve these false identities, we reclaim our inner peace.
we realize that the emptiness we feared isn't a void at all, but the expansive, karma-free space of the true self.
How do we know if a connection is truly meant for our growth, or if it's just a ghost haunting our peace? To find closure, we must look through the lens of Yogananda's teachings to distinguish between a soul contract and a trauma bond. These terms are often used interchangeably in modern psychology, but spiritually, they leave very different footprints on the heart. Think of a soul connection as a breath of fresh air. Even when these relationships end, and they often do once the spiritual assignment is complete, the heart doesn't feel shattered so much as it feels expanded. You look back and experience a quiet, profound gratitude for the lessons learned. There is a sense of, thank you for being part of my journey. The energy is open and light. A karmic loop or a trauma bond, however, feels like a contraction. It's like being stuck in a dark room with no windows. You feel a magnetic pull, yes, but it's a heavy, suffocating one. You aren't drawn to them by love, but by a compulsion to fix, to win, or to finally receive the validation you were denied. This is what Yogananda would call an ego knot. When a memory of that person returns, you must perform a bit of spiritual discernment. Ask yourself, is this memory returning because there is still genuine love to be expressed? Or is it returning because there is an ego knot that needs to be untied? If the thought brings resentment or a desire for justice, that's the ego holding the rope. We must stop romanticizing our pain and start performing the spiritual surgery required to set ourselves free. True closure happens when you realize the knot was never in the other person. It was always within your own heart, waiting to be released. To begin the practical journey towards closure, we turn to a method Paramhansa Yogananda frequently advocated, the practice of introspective silence. This isn't just about sitting in a quiet room. It's a radical shift in how you relate to your own mind. Most of us are perpetually trapped within the emotional narrative, the he said, she said, or the endless, if only I had done things differently. Introspective silence asks you to step back from the script and become what Yogananda called the neutral observer. Think of it like watching a film of your own life. Instead of being the actor weeping on screen, you become the person in the projection booth, watching the light hit the wall. When an old memory or that familiar, sharp sting of an unfinished goodbye resurfaces, your job is not to engage with the dialogue. You must refuse to argue with the ghost of the memory. Instead, shift your entire focus to the physical sensations in your body right now. Where does the tension actually live? This is a vital question because karma manifests as localized energy. Scan your heart. Is there a heavy weight pressing down? Check your throat. Does it feel tight, as if it's still holding back words never spoken? Or perhaps your solar plexus feels knotted with a lingering, restless anxiety. By witnessing these sensations without judgment, you are performing a form of spiritual surgery. In yogic philosophy, these recurring emotional loops are known as samskaras, deep-seated impressions etched into the subconscious. Every time you replay the drama, you feed the samskara with your attention. Yogananda taught that your attention is literally life force. By observing the sensation neutrally, you withdraw that life force. You stop feeding the loop, which is the only thing keeping it alive. Eventually, the cycle breaks, and you reclaim your peace. To move beyond these loops, we need a practical way to sever the energetic tether. Paramhansa Yogananda taught that true reconciliation happens within the soul's own sanctuary, rather than through external confrontation. Let's engage in a powerful visualization for inner closure. Find a quiet space where you won't be disturbed. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. Visualize yourself entering your inner temple, a place of absolute stillness and brilliant light within your own consciousness. In this sacred space, visualize the person with whom you have an unfinished goodbye. See them sitting directly across from you. Here, the distortions of the ego, the anger, the betrayal, and the disappointment fall away. You are not looking at a personality. You are looking at a fellow soul, another spark of the divine. Now speak the truths you never said, but do not speak from the ego's desire to be right or to win an argument. Speak from the light. This is about truth-telling in its purest form. You might acknowledge the pain, but you must move toward the spiritual realization. Tell them directly, "I see the lesson you brought me, and I release you from the debt I felt you owed me." Whether it was an apology you never got or love you felt was withheld, you are choosing to cancel that karmic debt today. This silent communication operates on the astral plane, where true reconciliation happens regardless of whether the other person is alive or present in your physical life. By doing this, you reclaim the energy you've spent waiting for external validation. You finally complete the cycle within your own heart, which is where the karma was stored all along. You are finally free to walk away.
This brings us to a crucial phase of the practice, something Paramhansa Yogananda often referred to as the spiritual release valve. If the mind is the pilot, the breath is the literal bridge between the physical body and the soul. When we experience an unfinished goodbye, the emotional residue isn't just a fleeting thought. It's a physical and energetic imprint stored deep within our nervous system. To move past these repetitive loops, we must learn to flush the system using specific pranayama techniques. By consciously directing the life force, or prana, we begin to loosen the grip of these ancient, heavy attachments. But how do we deal with those specific memories that feel particularly dense? Yogananda offered a powerful method using the Om vibration to shatter what he called mental crystallizations. Think of a painful memory or a lingering karmic tie as a solid, jagged stone lodged in the middle of a clear stream. It creates constant turbulence and catches every bit of debris that floats by. As you sit in meditation and chant or focus on the sacred sound of Om, visualize those sound waves as high-frequency vibrations hitting that stone. The cosmic vibration of Om is the creative force of the universe. It has the inherent power to return all things to their original source. As you feel the vibration resonate in your chest and your mind, see the solid, rigid images of that person or situation beginning to crack and crumble. Watch as the stone of the memory loses its density, turning back into the fluid water of pure consciousness. You are essentially de-escalating the energy from a fixed, painful state back into a state of potential and peace. When the memory becomes water, it no longer blocks the flow of your life. It merges back into the ocean of your own inner stillness, allowing you to finally reclaim your power and find true closure.
We often think of forgiveness as a gift we give to someone else, but Paramhansa Yogananda flipped that perspective entirely. He taught that forgiveness is the ultimate alchemical tool for finishing a goodbye. It isn't about saying what the other person did was okay or condoning their actions. Instead, it's a radical act of self-liberation. When you withhold forgiveness, you aren't actually punishing the other person, you are shackling your own heart to them. You become energetically tethered to the very person or memory you wish to escape. It is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to feel the effects. To understand the mechanics of this, we can look at what Yogananda described as the karmic ledger. Imagine your soul maintains a spiritual accounting book for every interaction you have. When you hold a grudge, you're effectively keeping a debt open on your own books. You are waiting for a payment of sorry or justice that may never come. By staying in that state of waiting, you keep that relationship in your active file, meaning it continues to loop in your subconscious and drain your vital energy. Forgiveness is the precise moment you decide to write off the debt. You aren't saying the debt wasn't real, you're saying that your internal peace is worth more than the collection process. This internal shift is the final energetic signature needed to close the account forever. It is the only way to move a relationship from the active file to the archived file in your soul's journey. When the ledger is balanced through forgiveness, the karmic loop breaks, and you are finally free to walk away with a light heart.
So, what actually happens when the cycle is finally completed? There is a tangible, unmistakable shift in your internal environment. Many people report a sudden feeling of lightness right in the center of the chest, as if a physical weight, one they hadn't even realized they were carrying, has been permanently removed. This is the physiological manifestation of a karmic release. In this state of completion, the memory of the person or the event doesn't necessarily vanish from your mind. You haven't developed amnesia. However, the memory no longer carries that sharp, visceral sting. You can think of them, you can recount the history, and you feel nothing but a neutral, perhaps even compassionate stillness. The emotional charge, that magnetic pull of regret, longing, or anger, has been completely neutralized. You'll notice that the loops simply stop. Those mental movies you used to play on repeat, the "I should have said this" or "why did they do that?" they just fade into the background until they disappear. Even your subconscious signals this shift. Those recurring dreams or restless nights often cease entirely. But perhaps the most profound sign of completion is what happens in your external reality. You find that you no longer attract people who trigger that specific old wound. You have, as Paramhansa Yogananda might suggest, graduated from that particular grade in the school of life. Because you have integrated the lesson and released the attachment, the universe stops giving you that specific test. You are no longer vibrating at the frequency of that unfinished business. You are free to move forward into entirely new experiences, unburdened by the ghosts of the past. This is the true reclamation of your inner peace, where your energy is finally fully yours again.
How do we truly step out of the emotional loop and reclaim our peace? The spiritual technology for this, as Paramhansa Yogananda taught, is the development of vairagya, or holy detachment. Now, it is vital to understand that detachment does not mean you become cold or stop loving. Yogananda emphasized that holy detachment actually clears the path for pure love because it removes the element of need. When we are stuck in an unfinished goodbye, we are essentially operating from a place of spiritual hunger. We feel we need that person to apologize, to return, or to acknowledge our pain before we can be okay. Vairagya flips the script. It allows you to love the souls of your past from a place of completeness. You can wish them well and honor the connection without needing them to be different or to fill a void in your heart. This shift happens when you anchor your awareness in what Yogananda called the ever-new joy of the soul. This isn't a temporary high. It is a profound state of being that is entirely independent of the presence or absence of others. Imagine the energy you have left scattered across years of what-ifs and if-onlys. By practicing this detachment, you are essentially gathering those fragments. You are reclaiming the light you left in the shadows of old memories. You no longer walk through the world as a fragmented being, searching for missing pieces in another person's hands. Instead, you become whole in the present. You realize that the closure you were seeking externally was actually a reclamation of your own power. When you finally complete that emotional cycle, you aren't just saying goodbye to them. You are saying hello to your own reclaimed spirit.
We arrive at the end of our exploration, standing at a threshold. Paramhansa Yogananda often spoke of the soul as a vast ocean, and every unfinished goodbye as a small ripple that keeps us from seeing the depths of our own peace. But when we choose completion, we aren't slamming a door in anger or resentment. We are gently closing it because the room is empty. The lesson has been fully integrated. Walking forward with a clean slate is the ultimate act of spiritual liberation. It is the difference between being a pawn of your past, endlessly reacting to old wounds and familiar ghosts, and becoming a conscious creator of your future. Yogananda's teachings remind us that our true nature is infinite and fundamentally free. We are Sat Chit Ananda, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. But how can we experience that ever newness if we are still tethered to the heavy luggage of yesterday's unresolved emotional loops? By mastering the karma of unfinished goodbyes, we dissolve the energetic charge, or the samskara, that keeps the cycle spinning. You stop looking for the closure you think others owe you and